Good morning, friends, and welcome back to my channel, Seasonally Productive. On this day, actually this spans a couple days, we are getting the herbs put away for the fall. Before we can do that though, it's breakfast. So I have my boy cooking the bacon and our daughter's getting the waffle batter ready, and I had some strawberries to put in the freezer. So these were being flash frozen, and then once I put them into a bag, they don't stick together. So if you have never done that before or never heard of it, it really helps for things that you don't want to be all in one clump. So getting those put in a bag, and then I can finally get to the herbs. If anyone is wondering, here's how the waffles turned out. Of course, we love having a nice, yummy breakfast on the weekends here. So I'm going to go through a couple different ways of I guess preserving, or like how I'm storing my herbs, and just kind of talk through that. It's going to be a very casual video. So this is my dehydrator trays, and we just have like a budget-friendly dehydrator. So I just use the trays, fill them up with herbs. It's pretty much what I do all the time, and then I just set them out to dry. So you saw me pick out the red clover. I just had a few of those. Now I'm getting the dandelion buds done. You can see I'm emptying out my jar first. That's because I want the oldest stuff at the top to be used up first. So throwing in the dandelion heads, and then the older ones would go back on top. However, I did decide to do something a little bit different this time. But I am going to point out the cheesecloth on top. So if my herbs, if I feel like they're not totally dry, then I will put cheesecloth on top so they can still release some moisture. So I did end up putting those dandelion in a different jar, and then I just had a little bit of pineapple weed or chamomile in there to do. I'm also finding bits of yarrow. You're going to find that when you do this, you miss stuff, right? So you have to go back and put it into the jars. And then I started on the raspberry leaf. These are a combination of wild raspberries and from my own personal raspberry bush, but mostly wild. And then I had a little bit of rabbit root there. I'm going to put that to the side for a minute and start working on the sage. But my sage I am going to use for smudging, for smoke cleansing. So what I do is I just fold up the stalks of sage or whatever herb you're using, and then I wrap it in twine and tie it up, and there is my smudging bundle. It's very simple. It is not as pretty as the ones you buy in the store, but the intention is there, right? So here's some rose hips. You can see sometimes when they dry, they don't always dry nicely. So sometimes I do have to, compost a little bit, but that's not very common. This is goldenrod. This is going to become one day salve or balm, and there's different oils I'm going to do, but for now I just want to get these into jars and off of my dehydrator trays. So lots of goldenrod coming up here. Actually, to be honest, this stuff here is probably going to be used for teas, and then I do have more coming up later in the video that you'll see that I'll probably concoct into some other different things. Like I said, this video is just about getting things into storage, because when I was doing this, we were getting ready for a giant trip. There are videos going to be coming up very soon. I'm hoping that I can kind of get them all out quickly, but we did go on a big trip, and there's information coming on that after I get caught up on all this fall stuff. So here's the rabbit root that I was talking about. That is going to go on top of the fridge just to dry a little bit longer. And then I have this next tray full of nettle, and this was nettle leaves, so they're going into a jar for teas. So if you're not familiar with the term garbling, herb garbling, it essentially just means working with the plants. And in this case, my plants are dry, so I'm working with my dried herbs here, kind of. Some of them sometimes you might pull pieces, leaves, flowers from the stalks. Other times you might use the entire stalk. Other times you might concoct it into an oil or a tincture. Today we're just getting some projects done, getting things cleaned up, and that's garbling. That's really all it means. It's a fun word. I really like using it, and it's kind of just a fancy way of saying playing with plants. But you will find that it does get messy. So when you're doing it, just be aware of that and don't get too caught up on that, because it's all fun, and you can pick through the leaves at the end and kind of redistribute them into their homes, or you can just sweep them into the compost and give it as an offering back to the earth. Either way, you have to clean up anyway, so I like to pick through and redistribute back into their homes so that I can use them, because it is a lot of work to go through to harvest all these things. So now that I got the nettle done, I was kind of just, again, picking through those leaves, seeing what else I could find. Always things get, mixed up unless you have a tray just for a certain thing, and other bits can't fall onto it. I'm not too particular on it. I like to keep all the energies together, just as they are in the wild. So on this bottom tray, you see I have quite a bit more rabbit root, I have calendula, and I have corn silk. So I'm getting those put into jars and then just doing a little bit of a tidy up, and then we're going to jump into the next part of the video, which is really the bulk of my garbling. So on this day, I'm going to be working with bed straw and yarrow. So you can see I have both there. The more brighter white ones in my hand right now are a yarrow, and the bed straw is kind of the finer, more like a creamy or vintage white color. So I'm going to start with the bed straw, and I'm going to be doing a few different things. I'm going to be making some sleep sachets, I'm going to be making a deodorant, and I'm going to be making an oil as well. So I have some in a pot here, and I'm heating that up on the stove with some water to release some of the water soluble oils and the water soluble components, and then I'm going to strip the rest into this bowl, and I'm going to make those into a few different. So I do have a book that I would recommend. I follow lots of books, but the one that I'm going to recommend I will leave down in the comments below. It's specific to northern Canada, and I really, really find it just so informative and useful, and pretty much almost anything I need I can find in there. There are a few things that I have in my part of Canada that are not in this book, but for the most part I can find information in this book, and I really like the appendixes at the end that give information on different ailments and what you can use, the plants and medicines you can use to help you with that things. So first I'm going to do a tincture with some rum. I was out of vodka, so I just had some rum, white rum, and I'm using that. And then I'm going to put some in a jar with some olive oil and sweet almond oil, and that's going to become a lymphatic oil. And then I am also going to put some in a jar for tea, and the rest I am putting into some homemade little linen sachets for under our pillows. Fun fact, bed straw or cleavers was called bed straw because it used to be used to stuff mattresses, which would be, as you can imagine, very aromatic. Maybe not super comfortable. You would need quite a lot of it, but the reason that people stopped doing that, similar to straw mattresses, is obviously because they were very flammable, and before there was electricity and people lit their homes with real fire, you can imagine that it did pose quite a hazard. Alright, switching over to yarrow. possibly my favorite plant, but I don't know that I can have a favorite medicine. I really do enjoy working with yarrow, though. The smell of her is just beautiful, and I enjoy the flavor of her in my teas and everything else. Of course, her beauty too, the way that she presents herself is unique, and yeah, I just really enjoy being in a field of yarrow. Anyway, I am garbling these stalks down, and I'm going to get this into some of it into a jar with some witch hazel, and this is going to be a facial toner. I'm very excited for that. And then we're going to bring back my bed straw concoction I had on the stove here, and I'm going to get that strained into a jar, and this is going to become deodorant. So I am adding some rum to this just to keep it from going bad, so for preservative, and then I add vitamin E oil as well. I have mine in capsules, and I just cut them open and then squirt the oil into whatever I'm using. And for this specific tonic, I am putting it into a little spray bottle so that I can spray my armpits with it. It makes for a little bit easier application. If you don't have a spray bottle, you could just use a cotton ball or a face cloth or something and just dab it onto your skin. Okay, now we've brought yarrow back into the picture, and I'm just filling a couple jars. One will be for teas, but this more like milk type shaped jar is going to be oil. So I'm adding in almond oil and extra virgin olive oil. I also want to stress the importance of labeling. The biggest lie I always tell myself with anything is that I will remember. The truth is, I don't remember. I need to label it, and then it takes the guesswork out. I do not have to remember. It frees up brain space. Just take that extra few minutes and label your tinctures, your oils, your teas, whatever it is. Maybe it's not even something to do with herbs, but just take the extra time to label it. Write it down now so you don't have to forget it later, and it just makes your life so much easier when you come to a jar and you're wondering, oh yeah, what did I put in here again? So take the time to label. I also like putting the dates on things too, especially if you need to later strain your solution. Okay, now I'm coming in with the last of the herbs before we go on our trip here. So starting with bergamot. Oh, another one of my favorites. How can I have so many favorites? I don't know, but I do. So bergamot is coming in, and I am putting pretty much everything in this next section here is all just being put into jars for storage, because I didn't have time before we left for our trip to actually do anything further with them, make any balms or salves. But I am looking forward to doing that kind of in the dead of winter, making some really nice ointments and things like that. I was also saving a bit of bergamot for a cooking project I had going on this day. That's pretty much a lot of what bergamot gets used for in my home is in our food. However, I did keep a little bit for teas, and I did tincture some, and I think I have plans to make some sort of oil-based product with bergamot as well. I think it's really good for like muscle aches and things like that, so I'm going to try that out. This is just a little bit of fennel. I had kept fennel fronds from my fennel plants this year, and I'm so happy I did. I'm glad to have this in my spice cabinet and in my tea cupboard actually. So that's more for me. Nobody else in my family really enjoys fennel, but Mama's going to be enjoying that all year now. Then I had a little bit of fireweed plant here, so stripping the leaves and the flowers and getting those put into jars, again primarily for teas. Next up we have probably my favorite find from this year is wild mint. It is something I've been on the hunt for, and I finally found it. And the thing about mint, if you're familiar, is you often smell it before you see it, and I just love that about it, mint. So I happened to be just kind of traveling through one of my special foraging spots at my parents' place, and I could smell her, and my nose led me to this beautiful medicine. So in this section of the video, you can see I have quite a bit of mint, and I'm getting her all stripped down and into jars for teas and for cooking, and eventually for salves too. Next up, I have sage. So these are getting put into bundles for smudging or smoke cleansing. I do have some sage in my pantry for cooking. However, I don't actually love cooking with wild sage. I just find it really bitter. So keep that in mind if it's your first time. I have ruined dishes from using too much of it. Then I also have a second type of sage, or what I call stinkweed. So it is different than sage, the sage that I know, and I am going to try and bundle it up this year and see if I like burning it or not. And then I have this massive pile of goldenrod. This jar is huge. I actually found this jar on the side of the road this spring. We just randomly stopped. We were coming home from our little friend's birthday party, 1-year-old birthday party, and on the way home we stopped on the side of the road because the water was flowing down the valley, and it's one of my favorite things to see every year. So anyway, we stopped with the kids and got out, and we were exploring, and of course when we stop we often pick the ditches for garbage and recycling and all that things, and I found this gigantic jar. It was a Vlasic jar, so it had pickles in it at one time, but it is huge. I think it is probably a gallon, and it is just huge. But of course I did not find the lid for it, so works out fine for herbs and things like that, where I can put a coffee filter over top with an elastic band and don't have to worry about it being sealed. So that is what I'm doing with my goldenrod. And the final herb we have to work with this year is dock. So there is a combination in here. I believe they are curled dock and red dock. I'm treating them all as one, and I am harvesting the seeds, actually, not the leaves and not the stalks, but I'm harvesting the seeds. So you can see I have a little helper here with me, and it's a big job to get all these out, and it is a very messy job. I will not do this in the house again. Next year it will be done outside, but this is what we had to do this year. So start by stripping off every single branch, every single cluster, and I am just leaving the seeds themselves in their seed coats, because it's just so much easier. It's a lot of extra work to get the seeds out, and I personally don't think it's worth all the extra work. So I do have intentions of purchasing a grain mill, and once I do, I can grind this into flour, but until then I can just use it whole right now in baking or in yogurt bowls or oatmeal or things like that. So it is a great source of fiber and of course other medicinal properties as well. So I'm really excited to have this on my pantry shelf. Speaking of my pantry shelf, oh my goodness, I am so excited to share with you our pantry makeover. When we were gone on our trip, honestly, this sounds like, how could I be any more mom-like? Holly housewife. But what I was missing the most when we were away on our vacation was my pantry. I had just kind of moved everything into it, a few weeks before we left. So I was still in love with it, and I am still in love with it now. I just love it. And I have an entire shelf just for herbs. So it is beautiful, and I am so excited to share it with you. That video should be coming out very soon. So once we got everything stripped down, I was able to have my pillowcase back that I have been missing for a few months, and I got all the seeds into a bag, and things just kind of moved along from there. It was time to clean up and things like that. But that's going to be the end of this video. I am so thankful for you for being here right till the end and joining me in my herb journey. I really do. It is something special that I really enjoy every single year. So I am so grateful to be able to share that with you. And I really want to connect with other herbalists, if you call yourself that, medicine women. Even if you don't have a title for yourself, I don't really, but I am interested in herbalism. So if that's you, or if you have never picked a flower in your life but you're interested in it, leave me a comment down below and we can chat about it. That's really what my intention is with this video, is to connect with other plant lovers. So thanks again for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.